Good evening. It is 7 o'clock. I don't know if there's somebody from the forum who would like to introduce the meeting first. Dick, would that be you? Rebecca, are you going to make me the host, or how do you want to do this?
Dan, it's Mike DeVasto.
Hello, Mike.
Hey. So I'm never the host as the chair on the meetings. I don't know if it's helpful for you at all, but I just hit that participants button on the bottom and it will show you whoever's hand is up.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
You don't have to worry about, while moderating, muting people. Rebecca can kind of do that if people are needed to be muted during the meeting, but the first person whose hand up will rise to the top of the list on the participants list. So typically on the select board meetings, that's how we function, is Rebecca stays the host, and then I just sort of manage the meeting, and if things get out of control, Rebecca mutes everyone.
Okay. Just FYI, Rebecca and I had a exchange earlier today. If she can, she would like to leave. I think it's her daughter's birthday, and she asked if I would be willing to host. I think I can handle that, as long as I can watch for the raised hand. So
thank you.
So Rebecca, do you need to do something to make me the host here?
Yep, I'm gonna do that, but I disabled the waiting room so anyone can join at any time. It's
Okay.
recording, so you're all set. All you have to do is, like Mike said, look for the hand raise, which will be very easy to do if you have it in gallery view.
Yes, I've got that, and I've got the participants as well.
All right, and if you have any issues, you have my cell phone number.
Yes, just the one other thing, if I need to mute folks, how do I mute all?
You can just, down at the security bottom, it says mute all. Or if you hear the noise, they'll come up because their screen will light up. You hit mute. You can hit them on mute on the square.
Okay.
No, I was invited to it.
You guys are children. You don't get to do that.
Okay, Rebecca has just made me the host. Dick Elkin or somebody else from the forum, do you want to do a little introduction first, or do you want me to just
Yes, let me just say that we have done this annually, and I'm glad to see so many people, many of whose names I recognize and some who I don't, but many people. We'll go through the warrant in order. People who have questions about particular warrant articles or have presentations advocating for a warrant article, please raise your hand, and hopefully Dan will give you some time to advocate for your article. I know that the accessory dwelling has people who want to talk about it. Other than that, Dan, why don't you take over?
Thank you, Dick. And just a couple of ground rules before we start. First of all, thank you to the forum for continuing to do this and providing both the voters and administration, proponents, and so forth the opportunity to do a little preview of town meeting. It's civic duty, and I think it's to be appreciated. The other thing I wanted to say is my view of this is this is an opportunity for proponents of articles, for the administration, for the select board, to kind of get a sense in advance of what kind of questions are likely to be asked at town meetings, so that if they're not already prepared to answer those questions, this will give you a heads up, so that ideally you will come to town meeting prepared to answer those questions. This is not a forum for debating the warrant articles tonight. A, we don't have time for that, and B, that's not really the purpose this forum presentation. So if there is an article that you would like to present, I would ask you to try to be as brief as possible, and just explain by way of explanation more than by way of advocating in favor of the article. So if you would honor that, it would be appreciated. The other thing I just want to say is, if you haven't already, please go to the main town website to take a look at the guidance that Rebecca has posted. The town meeting planning task group has been working for a couple of months to present a successful town meeting outdoors, using the model that we established last September. It was a whole lot easier this time around, obviously, because we had worked out a lot of the kinks last time, but the guidance is a little bit different. So if you would take the time to just familiarize yourself with that guidance, I think it would be helpful for all involved. I also just want to take an opportunity to introduce Charles Sumner, who is our interim town administrator. And he's been on the job, what, about not quite 2 weeks yet, Charlie, somewhere in there. And I know he's working very hard. Do you want to say a word or two, Charles?
No, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Charlie Sumner, and actually today is 1 month, so I'm actually getting a little more comfortable. But thank you very much, Dan. Look forward to trying to help tonight.
Also, I also wanted to give a nod to my predecessor as moderator and our past town administrator, Harry Tarkanian, who stepped in and put a tremendous amount of work in helping to make sense out of what was a fairly chaotic situation in terms of putting the warrant together. So Harry, the town owes you a great deal of thanks. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Dan.
So the way we do this is, we'll go through the article, as Dick said, basically article by article, and anyone who would like to say something, please do raise your hand. If you're not already familiar, Zoom actually changed the way their little setup. If you would like to raise your hand, if you're on a computer, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says reactions. If you click on that button, that'll then give you the opportunity to raise your hand. And once you've done that and you're done being recognized, if you could lower your hand, that would be helpful. So I'm not exactly sure where that button appears on a cell phone or an iPad, but I think it's somewhere in the same area. If it's either, there should either be a raise your hand button, or you'll find it under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. So with that, the first article by charter on our warrant is always the operating budget. Charles, do you have any comments you would like to say about the budget in advance?
Well, I think the only thing I would like to say, of course, the budget is available in the warrant that's included on the town website. We will be making 4 amendments to the budget as it was posted. Those are just some additional areas that we realized were missing in the budget, and those total $107,956. So at the moment, those are a few amendments you'll see when the motion's presented on town meeting floor.
Thank you, Charles. As we have done the past few years, and I think it was actually Harry who initiated this, is we will have a motions booklet that will be available to every voter, be handed out to the voters as they come into the meeting. That's something that we're still working on now. So the voters will have the text of all of the motions in front of them, and with a few exceptions, we'll be able to make reference to those motion booklets and the wording therein, rather than having to read the whole motion. We've done that the past couple of meetings, and it was very successful in terms of moving the meeting along. This is a long warrant, and it's going to take the better part of the day to get through it, but I am hoping that we can complete all the work on Saturday. So any questions or other comments on the omnibus budget? I don't see any. Dick Elkin. Yes. You're muted, Dick. You have to.
Thank you. What is the effect of the free cash not being certified? I forget the current term for free cash, in terms of being able to spend money from free cash.
Charlie, can you answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Dick. So, the town does not have free cash certified at the moment. We won't be able to use free cash towards funding any of the items on the warrant. I think what you will see, we actually have a meeting tomorrow, several town officials to finalize some of the financing issues of the warrant and the budget, but we will have to use some money out of the stabilization fund to help finance some of the costs associated with this warrant. And I think it would be my goal to talk to the finance committee and the selectmen after we do get free cash certified, which I imagine would be sometime in the late summer or early fall. And then we could replenish the stabilization fund at that time. I think that would, from a bond rating standpoint and a procedural standpoint, that might be a good conversation for the town to have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Charlie. Mike DeBasto?
Yeah, I just wanted to double down on what Charlie just said, and the select board has already discussed the intent of the board to replenish those funds into the stabilization fund, or come up with a plan to replenish those when free cash is certified, which we expect to have a fair sum of money in, as it has not been allocated for the last 2 fiscal years. So there has been conversation on the board, and its intent was definitely clear in its desire to do that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Dick, you had another question on this? You're still muted, Dick.
You know how much money from the stabilization fund will be used in lieu of free cash?
At the moment, it looks like the intent, based on the draft warrant motions rather that I have, it looks like $1 million out of the stabilization fund. Is that correct, Charlie?
No. I think I think we'll probably be looking at in the
I'm sorry.
range of,
Yeah, I was looking at the capital budget, my mistake.
oh, that's okay. Yeah, I think we'll be looking at maybe a couple $100,000, but we'll know better after we have our meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
And we'll print that in the motion book for voters to see in advance.
Thank you.
thank you, Dick. Thank you, Charlie. Other questions on Article 1 on the budget? Okay, seeing none. Article 2 is an annual article. It's budget transfers within lines on the existing year's budget. There's only one that's printed in the warrant. There will actually be quite a few more. It looks like somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 or 13 based on the draft motions that I see. And again, that's still something that's being worked on, but there will be a number of those transfers that you will see, excuse me, in the motions booklet. Article 3 is the capital budget, and these are the items that have a longer lifespan and will be funded in a variety of ways. And again, money is going to be, some of the money will be raised and appropriated, some will be transferred from various other funds. Questions or comments on the capital budget? Charlie, anything specific you want to say on that?
Thank you, Dan. The only thing I would like to let people know changes that'll be in the motion for the capital budget is we will be eliminating 2 of the items, the town clerk microfilming and the town clerk shelving. So other than that, I believe everything else that's included in the warrant that Harry had done an incredible job in drafting will be presented to the voters on the 26th.
Yeah, and for those you're curious, the specifics of the capital proposals or the capital budget items that are included in this warrant item are in Appendix B, as they always are. The next item is the Marina enterprise budget. The town does fund a part of the Marina enterprise budget. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, the water enterprise budget, much the same. Questions or comments there? Prior year invoices, I believe that there's one that needs to be paid because this is a prior year. It'll require a supermajority of 4/5 vote on those present and voting. Questions or comments on that? These are usually invoices that for some one reason or another were not submitted on time, but they are expenditures that the town does rightfully owe to a vendor. I'm sorry, I lose my place here. Yes, Article 7 is the union contract. Has that contract now been settled, Charlie?
Yes, it has. The funding for that article will be the amount of $32,857.
Okay.
And it reflects largely a 3% cost of living increase and some changes to educational incentive.
All right, thank you. Article 8, non-union and other personal salaries compensation. If there are raises that are given to the non-union employees, this is where they're usually funded. Again, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's an amount associated with that yet. Is there, Charlie?
Yeah, I will just say to everyone that that's an area that I just haven't spent enough time to evaluate. We've still been working on the budget itself and budgetary transfers. So we'll be working on that in the next week. So I'm unsure at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I guess there's some question as to whether those amounts are actually included in the omnibus budget lines, or whether they will need to be funded separately. And I think, based on some of the uncertainty, it's just not clear yet, but it will be by the time of town meetings. Article 9, the fire department is proposing to add 2 new full-time positions. Chief Pauly, would you like to say anything about that briefly?
Just a moment briefly. Certainly, as the majority, from what I understand, with request to the previous article, it's always been, I shouldn't say, it's been the practice of a number of the department heads to include those dollar figures in the presented budget for the individual departments. So that's been a practice at least since I've been here. And I know, Dan, when you were fire chief, you did that. And I believe that's happened in a lot of the departments. So I don't see, with respect to Article 8, a big variation there or something that should surprise us. I just wanted to mention that before we get on to Article 9.
Okay. Harry, did you want to say something about the Article 8?
Yes, I did. It's really limited to situations where there is an expiring contract with a non-union officer that hasn't been renegotiated yet. And I put it in the draft warrant only because I did not know whether there were any people that fell in that category. If there are none, we won't need to take any action on that.
Okay. I understand that explanation. Chief Pauly, go back to Article 9.
Article 9, again, and we're asking for 2 more full-time personnel. That would allow us to have 4 firefighter EMTs or paramedics on each shift. We run 4 shifts to cover the town for 365 days a year. That is a minimum as to what we need in order to provide ambulance service and perhaps a backup person or 2 for the second call. I would just say that the townspeople have been very, very supportive in our last 3 requests. But we are just at a position now where we're down to 4 on-call members. And again, I'm looking at least 2 retiring in the next year. And again, as you've heard me say, no one's coming through the door. So with respect to fire department staffing, if I could use the analogy, I think it might be a little appropriate here on the baseball field, we're just about hitting third base right now. So if we can pass these 2 positions, there'll be another request next year, but that would basically hopefully come out of existing budget funds as a result of call department retirements and maybe some additional revenue. So we're really close. And this would just get us to 4 people per shift, which is a bare minimum. And I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Pauly on Article 9? Not seeing any. So do you want to, while you have the floor, Chief, Article 10?
So Article 10 is something that we started 2 years ago to provide money of up to $10,000 a year to fund a paramedic training program for some of our either on-call or full-time firefighter EMTs that want to advance their skill level to paramedic, which is about a 2-year commitment. And that costs just about $9,000 for the class, and then a little additional money for books and materials. So I've proposed to take this out of the ambulance receipts fund, which I think is the proper place to take it out of. And hopefully, it'll just be basically a transfer of funds from ambulance receipts to fund this for one training program if someone chooses to take advantage of it.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that? I don't see any. Again, Article 11, Chief Pauly.
This is this was a question that I withdrew from last year's town warrant because we had so many there were so many requests made of the taxpayers, and we have had some abilities to get some radio grants through the state. So we were able to basically withdraw it for a year, kind of regroup, and this will help us finish up our radio replacements because the whole system is going to change from an old analog system in the next year or two up to what we call digital. So they're replacing the whole hardware, some towers up and down Barnstable County for every fire department, and this will help us to hopefully round this project out, which has been an ongoing request for about 3 years now, I believe.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions on Article 11? Okay, Article 12 proposes to replace an emergency vessel for the Marina Department. Is the harbor master on? I can't see all the names at once. I don't see him, but are there any questions about this article? Or any comments? Okay, seeing none. Article 13 is one of several articles that are being requested by the DPW. Mr. Norton, Jay Norton, any comments or on this?
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, everybody. Jay Norton from the DPW here. Article 13 is pretty straightforward. We're requesting $60,000 to replace an 18-year-old 3/4 ton Chevy pickup that we use for plowing and other general DPW services, including building maintenance, grounds, and highway. This is deferred from last town meeting as well.
All right, thank you, Jay. Questions about that? See none. Article 14, again, Jay Norton.
So Article 14 is requested for $240,000 to replace our roll-off truck that we use at the transfer station. The current truck we use is a 2001, so it's about 20 years old. It's got over 420,000 miles on it, and it's seeing some really hard wear and tear. We use the truck for recycling operations, for snow removal, building cleanouts, and also the culture program with the shellfish department. So it's an integral component to their operations as well.
Thank you. Any questions on Article 14? Seeing none. Article 15, again, Jay.
Article 15 is requested for $50,000 for the Mayo Creek revetment and engineering. This was brought to light a few years ago. We noticed some settling in the road in front of the Pearl, where there's a culvert under the road. So we want to have an engineering analysis of the revetment that's adjacent to that to see the structural integrity of it and make sure that it's not settling. And this also ties into the greater project there of the Mayo Creek restoration. So this is just another piece of that puzzle to keep the project moving forward.
I'm curious, which are you looking at the inland side or the harbor side of that? Or is it
both?
Both, okay. I don't get to ask questions at town meetings, so this is my opportunity to ask questions. Dick Elkin. unmute.
Thank you. John Kumbler had circulated a memo some time ago that while we were looking at this revetment, we ought to also consider sea level rise and the implications for the 208 plan. So rather than narrowly just reconstruct what's there, I think there might be a wider charter for the engineer. And I don't totally understand what the 208 plan implications were, but I do know that with sea level rise, there are some implications there. And when we decide what the consultant should do, I hope that those considerations are taken into account.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Mike Tabasco?
Yeah, so that has been brought forth, and that is part of the scope of this. I think there's been communication with the DPW and the wastewater department as far as the waste, which is now the clean water, wastewater committee is now the clean water committee. And those issues have been brought forth to DPW and is part of the, if I'm not mistaken, the scope of the engineering.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
I might want to suggest, based on the questions, that the DPW or the select board be prepared to kind of pre-answer that question when it comes to town meeting. All right.
Sure, yeah, that was definitely coordinated, and we're also in touch with the NRAB too. So John Reel, we'll keep him in the loop, and Hillary and all those parties too. So we understand this is part of a greater scope. This is just, keeping the project moving forward, in our opinion.
All right, thank you. John Wolf.
Just to be clear, is this engineering study something that would be done irrespective of the Mayo Creek project, as far as maintaining the viability of the road there?
Thank you, John. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where, the DPW noticed it and brought it to everybody's attention, because we did see some settling in the road there. So it was a cause of concern. And also knowing that there was another greater component, project being in the wings there, we want to make sure that we're coordinating with all parties, and that's made clear to us. So we're taking all these comments into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Helen Wilson. Unmute, Helen.
Sorry. Through you to Jay. Is this repair going to just put another culvert in there, or is there going to be a water control structure component? In other words, is there going to be some kind of tidal gate there?
So the funding that we're requesting is not for construction. It's really for an analysis of the revetment, to see the construction, to see if there's any cause of settling, but we'll also loop in the culvert component there to see what we need to do in the future to make that either larger or have some type of tidal control structure, which ties into the Mayo Creek restoration, which is very similar to the Herring River restoration. So it's all of those components will be brought to the engineer to consider. Woods Hole Group has already done a major study there. So we're hoping we can use a lot of that data to further this study along.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Any other questions about Article 15? Article 16 is the replacement of the big backstops at Baker Field. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, I think it's.
Yeah, this is another deferred maintenance item for the recreation department. If anybody's been out there recently, the backstops are in pretty hard disrepair. They're rusting, they're falling apart. So this is a critical maintenance element that we need to tackle.
Thank you. Article 17, annual rate of local excise tax on short-term rentals. This is, I assume the select board is putting this forward. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes.
Would you,
So the select board is putting this forward with the intent that we can make some impact on our housing issues with the funding from this. But regardless, we know that short-term rentals have increased dramatically through Airbnb, and it's an opportunity for the town to capitalize on that use of property. And we did not see the fallout from the short-term rental tax. In fact, short-term rentals have never been higher than they are right now. And our neighboring towns have also either entertained or have implemented the 6% maximum tax rate for local use. So.
Thank you, Mike. Questions on this? Again, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. John Wolf, you have a question? Yes.
Just a quick question. Are there any plans to specifically designate that additional revenue toward, say, affordable housing, or would it go into the general fund?
Is there someone who can answer that?
Yeah, so this has come before us. I'm also on the board of the Affordable Housing Trust, and the Housing Trust voted to bring this to the select board. It's kind of been, because of our current constraints with the lack of certification of free cash, it's kind of been deferred to make that request at this time, just due to our current budget constraints. But there is a request from the Affordable Housing Trust to allocate funds, a percentage of our short-term rental revenue to the Housing Trust, which has a which would dedicate all its funding towards housing needs, both workforce and affordable housing. And one of the things about the short-term rental tax revenue is there's no strings attached to it. Unlike most of the revenue that comes into the town for affordable housing, it is locked into income restrictions and also open to applications from anyone in the state. So the benefits of this funding are that it can go above the levels of affordable, so it can be used to offset costs for purchasing for families that are above that affordable rating, but below what it costs to actually live here. So it's unrestricted funds that could be used. And
Mike, I don't want to cut you off, Mike, but I don't want to get
that's
too
fine.
deep in the weeds tonight. I
Thank
think,
you. Thank you.
sorry
basically,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, I basically answered John's question. Is
Okay.
that is definitely under consideration, I believe.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm not trying to cut anyone short, but
Fair enough, Dan.
fair enough. Okay, I appreciate it. I got to be the bad guy sometimes.
Hey.
On Article 18, design for the Main Street, I believe this is the ongoing project that's going to redesign the Main Street intersection. This is the town's share of that. Am I correct? Jay, would you be the right one to answer this?
Yeah, that's correct, Dan. So this is to continue our consultant Stantec services to bring the project past the 25% design phase.
And just because we do have quite a few interested people here, I believe is it on the 30th that the engineers are going to be presenting the 25% design at a public hearing?
That was the plan, but we were on a roundtable meeting today, and it sounds like that might be pushed off a few weeks to a date yet to be determined.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. John, did you have a question about this article, or did you forget to put your hand down?
Sorry about that. Forgot to put my hand down.
That's okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions about Article 18? Article 19, the enhanced septic system upgrade. Is there someone who would like to speak to this? Kurt?
Yeah, Dan, if you wouldn't mind, what might help expedite the process, since there's 3 wastewater related articles. Scott Horsley's on right now. He has about a 5-slide presentation that I think would provide background for all 3 articles, if you would allow.
Again, I'm trying not to get too deep into the weeds tonight. So I have to allow him, now you're really taxing me here. I've got to allow him to share the screen.
Yeah.
See if I can- figure out how to do that. Rebecca left me on my own.
I think it's going to expedite the process, Dan, in terms of questions, and also just since it's basically covering all three articles at once.
Okay,
I think I've got it here, if you can see this.
you got it. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I will be brief, Mr. Chair. I only have 5 slides here. These 3 articles are in support to initiate the targeted watershed plan. And I'll just, some of you have seen this presentation before. This has been updated, but obviously the focus here is compliance with the Clean Water Act. We've designed a plan which we think will have quicker results. The plan does include a decentralized so-called nature-based solutions, but we do have a traditional backup plan that includes sewering and a wastewater treatment plant at the transfer station. The plan is designed to reduce costs, promote affordable housing, maximize local co-benefits, including jobs, and the plan is also sensitive to climate change. This is kind of an aerial or geographic overview of the plan, and I'll just quickly mention, if you can see my cursor, it certainly includes the Mayo Creek plan restoration project that was mentioned earlier. There's a permeable reactive barrier project along Commercial Street that I'll touch on and closer up in 1 second. The plan also includes the Herring River restoration. Here's the backup plan, which is part of our plan at the transfer station, wastewater treatment plant. We're including previously delineated sewer areas in the downtown area. The 95 Lawrence project is a really important part of the plan as part of phase 1. There's also some stormwater upgrades. And then, as I'll get to, some innovative alternative septics as well as shellfish that are part of this plan. So you can see that there are multiple elements, 8 or 9 elements that make up this plan. This is a focus on the 3 town meeting articles, downtown area. This is Duck Creek right here, the town pier. Each one of these dots on the plan represents a septic system. This data comes from the Cape Cod Commission. And so the 3 projects that are on the town meeting warrant is to do a initial engineering study of a permeable reactive barrier, which is essentially a subsurface filter that appears to be a very cost-effective way to intercept the nitrogen from all these high-density septic systems in the downtown area that flow towards Duck Creek. I'll just mention Eastham has installed one of these recently. Orleans has one in the ground. Falmouth, they're all working quite well. So we think this is a really good project. And the article really just is a first step on that to look at engineering design. I think people know about the 95 Lawrence project, which, as I've said several times, this could be a real win-win, in my opinion, for the town, for both affordable housing. It also represents a net reduction in nitrogen for the Duck Creek watershed. So I think that's just a fantastic project that will contribute significantly to the plan. And then thirdly, the 3rd article, which is I guess the first one of the 3, which is the innovative and alternative septics. And I do have this one slide that I'll just mention. I think most people have seen this, but a standard Title V septic system includes a septic tank and a leach field. The idea of the enhanced innovative and alternative is an additional treatment structure that essentially goes in the middle between these 2 structures. There are at least 3 or 4 technologies that have been tested at the Mass Tech Septic System Test Center, at the MMR facility, and those are showing tremendous results. So one of the articles is to fund just a beginning series of these systems to go in instead of traditional INA systems that really are not providing much benefit. And then finally, my last slide is really just a quick summary. The plan that we've put together includes all these elements on the left that I mentioned. These are capital costs of the plan over 30 years. You can see that using this non-traditional approach, decentralized, we're estimating between $30 and $60 million in capital costs. A traditional townwide sewer is probably upwards of $150 million. So we do see a significant cost savings here. And then the last slide is simply highlighting those 3 articles to begin work on what we believe are the 3 most promising technologies as part of that plan. So I will stop there and be happy to answer any questions if we have time, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And if you could end your screen sharing so I will see as many people as I can, that'd be great. Questions on this? John Wolf.
Yeah, 2 questions. One, the permeable barrier, if that intercepts the nitrates and so forth, where do they end up going? And my second question has to do with the INA. Are the aeration chambers dependent on electrical machinery for their functioning, and the wood chips, what is their estimated lifespan, and how costly would it be to replace them if and when that becomes necessary?
All great questions. First of all, on the PRB, the nitrates in the groundwater gets transformed to nitrogen gas that goes into the atmosphere, which is the same stuff we all breathe. So it really gets eliminated from the system. In terms of the wood chip based technologies, the estimates in terms of how long these will last in place is on the order of decades. There have been studies done at the University of Waterloo in Canada as sort of the most recognized researcher. And he's had these systems in the ground for 20 years, and 3% of the wood chips have been utilized over that 20-year period. So we're estimating 20, 30 years for the wood chips. And in terms of the two of the commercial technologies that have these wood chips in tanks, it's a very easy and inexpensive process to remove and replace those wood chips. I'm sorry, I'm actually forgetting the third question you asked.
The aeration chamber.
Yes,
okay, machinery.
Thank you. Yes, so there are actually 3 or 4 different of these so-called enhanced INAs. 2 of them use no power whatsoever. They're totally passive. The other 2 have a very small blower. It's 100 watts that basically infuses air. It's described as a slightly larger scale aquarium type of setup that does put oxygen into the aeration chamber. The nice thing about the technology, if there is a power outage, the system will still work. Worst case, it will revert to a Title V, but there will be a significant period of time where the system will still function without the oxygenation, probably a period of days, if not weeks.
Well, a low power like that could probably be solar powered.
It could be. It absolutely could be. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leslie. Yes, Dick, you need to unmute, please. Dick Elkin.
Yes. Given a large number of people have traditional Title V septic systems, what is the plan for, or is it possible to add this as a step in a traditional Title V septic system? And are we planning assuming this works, are we planning an activity to convince people to do that?
Yes, so they certainly can be added to an existing installation. In fact, this is being done right now in the town of Barnstable. There's a research project underway that the town of Barnstable, as well as EPA, Nature Conservancy, and the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition are participating, where they're doing exactly what you're suggesting. They're going into a neighborhood and inserting these systems essentially between or next to existing systems. So that certainly can be done. The details of that are on a lot by lot basis. And again, I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
Do we have some plan and vision to actually educate people about it so that they might adopt it?
Yes, in fact, the plan is one that it's a 30-year plan. So the plan would be that the idea that most of these would go in really at the homeowner's request for either a new development or an upgrade. If somebody's repairing the system, that would be the timing to do it. That way we're not forcing people to do it. We're doing it when people are essentially digging up their yard to begin with. There is a health regulation that we proposed that would formalize this. We've had a few meetings with the Board of Health. We expect to have several more. If in fact the town appropriates this money, we'll have to have another meeting with the Board of Health to see if they are able to implement that regulation, which would then basically build on existing regulations. As you may know, currently, if you're within 100 feet of a wetland or 100 feet of a well, you're required to put a so-called INA system in. But these are older INAs that frankly don't work that well. The plan would be to use this money that is for town meeting to provide a subsidy to those homeowners to put in one of these newer generations of these so-called enhanced INAs, which we expect to have significantly better results. Sorry, that was a bit of a long answer, but a lot to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horsley. Thank you, Dick. Other questions about these 3 articles? I think we kind of look at them as a group. Just for Mr. Horsley and for Kurt Felix, I hope you are aware that we are not going to be able to have PowerPoint presentations once again at this town meeting, so that if you do plan to try to present some of this information, you're entitled to 1 sheet double-sided, which needs to get to Rebecca Eldridge ASAP so that can be printed up for anyone who has wishes to present some material on any of these articles, either pro or con, we are doing the same thing we did last September, where anyone who would like gets two sides of a single page printed at the town's expense, and those will be distributed to all of the voters at the beginning of the town meeting, along with a motions booklet. So just I want to make sure that you're aware of that, as well as other voters who may wish to present for or against any of these articles. So I should have mentioned that at the beginning. My apologies. Any other questions on Articles 19, 20, or 21? Article 22 is a standard article. It basically allows the town to expend money that we receive from the state to repair our roads. Questions on that? Article 23, this is money that we get from the cable fees that we all pay for our Comcast service. This supports the public access television. We have to accept those funds in a specific manner. That's what this article is for. And Article 24, we have established this shellfish revolving fund, and the town has to set a spending limit on it each year. That's what this article does. Our shellfish constable is here. Nancy Chavetta, would you like to say anything about this briefly? Perhaps not.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I'm just,
it's okay. We're all learning.
so. Hi. So this is, like Dan said, it's just, we created this fund 3 years ago. Every year we need to say how much we're going to spend from it. So this is exactly the same repeat as last year, which is $40,000 that will go to cover 46. Our budget for propagation is $46,000. 40,000 of this will come from the Shellfish Revolving Fund, and then an extra $10,000 in case things come up, matching grant programs like last year. We hear there's one coming up in the fall, or for anything that might come up as an opportunity for the department. And it's always good to have a little extra money. I still have to bring it to the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Select Board to authorize how I would spend that extra $10,000. So there's certainly checks and balances in there.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Any questions on Article 24? Okay, seeing none. Article 25, disposal of dredging spoils. This is a request of the NRAB, Natural Resources Advisory Board. John Reel, I see you on.
I am here.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we all recognize the costs in conventional dredging, both the cost to carry the dredge spoils out to the center of Cape Cod Bay, but also the inconvenience to users of the marina when dredging doesn't take place in time. We sponsored some work with some money from the town at the Center for Coastal Studies to evaluate the dredge spoils in the North Marina Channel. Turns out that even though they look ugly, they're relatively benign. They're a combination of silt and natural algae. So we feel that we could embark on a program to, by a combination of dredging, dispersion, and pumping, move those dredge spoils onto the, taking advantage of the flood tide up Duck Creek, and let the material flow up Duck Creek, which is where it was originally intended to go. Key step in that is to make sure the dispersion is good, so that the material makes it up to Duck Creek and doesn't cascade out, precipitate out before it gets there. So we think we can come up with a plan at the end of this 25,000. And the next step would be to move forward with some sort of engineering and implementation process.
Thank you, John. Questions about Article 25? Seeing none. Article 26 is another one requested by the NRAB. John, briefly.
we start from the point of view that Wellfleet Harbor is vital to the town. It's perhaps our critical benefit. What we propose to do is to put together a package that talks about the ecological processes in the harbor. The harbor, if you like, audit. Critical to this is shellfish and large fish, such as striped bass. And the funds would allow us to do that study. And then if it's warranted, to put together all the information we have, including, for example, some water test data comes from the Center for Coastal Studies, into a proposed either future monitoring or to take some action steps if that was warranted.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John Real? Okay. The next section of the warrant, I'm sorry, John Wolf.
Yeah, actually, I fumbled the controls. I had really wanted to ask this before you went to this article. If I can go ahead, if not, I'll pass. This goes to something I raised when you gave your presentation to us at the MAC. I still have questions about what will happen to that silt when it is brought up into Duck Creek. It seems to me some of that came from Duck Creek, and what is to prevent it from flowing back out with the tide? And at the same time, the town owns property, the old Whitman property on Indian Neck. And given the makeup of the black custard, it seems to me that that could have potential commercial value as fertilizer instead of being put back in the marsh.
Yeah, without debating too much the merits of the proposal, if you could answer John Wolf's question briefly, Mr. Real.
I would like to take the answer to the first question offline, John. I'll get in touch with you and be prepared to answer that in more detail at town meeting.
That would be fine.
The question of fertilizer, Steve Swain has working on that project. Exactly. And I guess I think he's got some excellent ideas. I wish him well. I think it's better to have two ideas rather than one.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for your time. We can, like you say, take this up outside of the meeting.
I'd like to do that because I think there is an answer, but it's not in 25 words or less.
I understand. Thank you.
Respect for the rest of the things we have to get through tonight, John. I think for those who may not know, I believe when the harbor was first dredged, that it was the spoils were put out now just inside of where the breakwater is. Am I correct on that? Wasn't that where that piece of land originally came from?
Chipman Cove, I think.
Well, yes, I think a lot of it was deposited on the Whitman property. And it was built up there, but I don't think we're allowed to do that anymore. In any case, that's for smarter minds than mine. The next series of articles, if there are no other questions on that, I'm sorry. The next series of articles are the community preservation articles. These are articles of 27 through 32, and I'm going to propose to the meeting that we take these as a consent calendar. These don't involve any new expenditure of tax revenue. This is money that's already been collected as part of the CPC surtax on our tax bills. In general, these tend to be relatively non-controversial. So I'm going to suggest to the meeting that we take these as a consent calendar. Is there anyone from the CPC who would like to speak to explain any one of these individually now? And obviously there'll be the opportunity to explain them at town meeting as well. I don't mean to forestall debate on them, but my intent is to try to vote on them as a group to help move the meeting along. Gary Sorkin.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Gary Sorkin, I'm the chair of the CPC. Happy to answer any questions that people have, but in the interest of time, I think they're fairly straightforward. They've been non-controversial for a number of years. They're all fully funded and we have the money in place to award these grants.
All right, thank you. Any other questions about these CPC articles? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Gary. The next section is disposition of town property. There are two different articles, Article 33 and Article 34. Article 33 is talking about a piece of land somewhere near where the bike trail extension is coming across LeCount Hollow Road. And Article 34 is property in South Wellesley. Comments on this from anyone involved, I should say. I'm not. Yeah, these are being put forth by the select board. Is that correct, Mike?
Well, not really. They're not being
Okay.
forth by the select board, but they were brought to the select board.
Brought to the select board by the Open Space Committee.
Open Space Committee, and I don't know sorry, I'm just looking at the articles right now. Yeah, the first one.
Looks like the first
Ryan
one, the intent
remembers.
is to maybe sell it, offer it for sale to a butters or something like that.
That was the first one, Article 33.
Right.
I don't remember how that got, this was carried over from the last year's town meeting. So I don't remember exactly how it wound up on the warrant last year, and then it was deferred off of the town meeting warrant and then came back this year. So Harry has his hand up.
It looks like Harry may have an answer for us.
Yeah, I understand that was requested by an abutter to the property.
Okay. And it's currently a town-owned piece of property, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And do you know the genesis of Article 34? Is that again from the Open Space Committee?
Yes, that came from the Open Space Committee. Ryan might remember better exactly how that came before us. It was
Harry had his hand up, but he put it down. Put you on the spot again, Harry.
Yes, it's from the Open Space Committee.
Okay, I just, when we get to town meeting, it would be good to make sure that the people who are interested in it prepared to speak to it, explain why it came, where it came from. Harry?
If we had had a little bit more time before this warrant went to press, that's one of the things we would have liked to have done, would have indicated where these requests had originated, but we ran out of time to make the printer's deadline.
Okay, that's fair enough. But yeah, as I say, I think the voters would appreciate, having that information and having whichever group brought this forward be prepared to speak to it. So make note of that. The next article deals with accepting the layout of High Toss Road. And again, my understanding is that for one reason or another, the town never really officially took title to that road. And I believe that this is the Herring River project. There's some implications for that project, whether the town owns that road or not. Harry, do you want to enlighten us?
My understanding, and we're now calling on my recollection from 5 years ago, is that road was laid out as a town road, but it was never clear whether the town took the fee ownership or took an easement. And it's also not very well defined. So this proposal is to define it so that the Herring River Restoration Project presumably will understand what they have to deal with.
Thank you.
Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated. The summary says it all. Some bits of it nobody could find to confirm what Harry said, who owned what, when, and how. And you have to clean up, it's a version of cleaning up a title with taking, but not exactly. And it isn't just about getting permits, because you have to know whose it is in order to apply for these permits. It's also about applying for funds. You can't do it unless the ownership is certain, absolutely certain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other questions on Article 35? Article 36, I think the explanation is fairly clear. When we voted this originally, the idea was to put the tanks underground, and now that I believe they're going to be moved above ground, or have I got that backwards?
Backwards.
Backwards, okay. Originally, they were going to be above ground, now they're going to go underground. Okay. Questions on that? All right, the next several articles are various petitions that have come forward. Article 37 would ask the legislature to allow the town to establish a real estate transfer fee. Is there someone who would like to speak to this?
I'll speak to it.
Brian Curley?
Yep. So I wish I had the figures in front of me. The median home price has increased dramatically within the last 2 years. The current median is in excess of $600,000 per median house. That means that more than half of the houses are being sold at a value greater than that. The real estate transfer fee would attach a small percentage of a fee in excess of the value of the median home. Well, 20% value, 20% over the median home price or I guess the value above that amount would be subject to a tax. And this would generate a small amount of money each year. In a typical year, it would probably generate around 250,000. And that would be dedicated towards addressing some of the housing needs of this community. There are a number of other towns and cities that are asking for similar abilities. They include Boston, Provincetown, Chatham. Each one has a slightly different proposal. But there are a number of other municipalities within the Commonwealth that are asking for the same thing. More than likely, it's going to be similar to the short-term rental tax, where a number of communities ask for it year after year until the legislature decides to adopt a one-size-fits-all approach similar to what they did with the rental tax. And this basically gets us to be added to, adds us to that list as to the communities proposing this modest source of revenue that's dedicated, as I said, exclusively towards housing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And do we know if our legislators will bring this forward if the town votes to support this?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Sarah Peak's been bringing a similar one forward for the town of Provincetown for the last few years as well.
Yeah. Mike Cavasso?
Yeah, just one thing that Ryan missed was the tax is 2%, 1% on the buyer, 1% on the seller for any amount of money above 20% of the median house.
So yeah, so a house that sells for more than 20% of the median house price triggers the
tax, and it's 1% for the buyer, 1% of the seller. That's what's petitioned, but Ryan's probably right. It will probably be adopted in a way that's more of a one-size-fits-all thing. But this won't trigger it just voting for it, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, I know with a number of these proposals, they're real estate interested in the state that have a lot more influence with the legislatures than a town like Wellfleet. But I think the idea is that if the critical mass of towns ultimately comes together and asks for something like this, that will sometimes get the legislature to act. That's my editorializing for the night. Other comments or questions on Article 37? Article 38.
John has his hand up.
I'm sorry, John Wolf. I missed that.
Yes. Is the language dedicating those funds to affordable housing, is that pretty much ironclad?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, actually, so as it's written, there's $50,000 that would be dedicated to establishing a capital, basically a capital fund. And any value over the 50,000 would be dedicated solely towards housing. So this would, that having a capital fund that would fund, if there's a small ask for a number of different small expenses that could be funded through that, rather than having potentially to do a debt exclusion for small numbers as well. But basically, in a typical year, and $50,000 would be dedicated to the capital, and then $200,000 or more would go exclusively towards housing.
okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Article 38, again, Ryan, I believe you're putting this forward. Would you like to speak to it briefly?
Okay, 1 second. 38 is
Prevailing wage.
Oh, prevailing wage. So this is actually copied from the town of Chatham, and was proposed in the last legislative session by Representative Peak on their behalf. It basically would exempt the town from prevailing wages for small projects that are under $50,000 total. And the goal of this is to reduce some of the burdens placed on wealthy taxpayers for small projects. So it's just meant as a way to most economically meet some of these needs. So thank you.
I think it also opens the opportunity for local contractors to bid on some of these smaller projects, whereas frequently they can't because of the prevailing wage laws.
Yes, and prevailing wage determinations are it's a lot of paperwork. We'll put it that way. And this would hopefully open up the door to some of the local tradespeople. So thank you.
Was Chatham successful in getting this exemption? Do you know?
I do not know if they've been successful yet. I just saw when it was filed, and I haven't followed the bill since. And when it was filed was, I think 6 months ago. So I'll check up on it.
I was going to say it might be useful information for the town
Yep.
to know whether it's successfully moving through the legislature. If you can, that would be helpful. Okay. Any other questions on Article 38? Article 39 proposes to create an agricultural commission. And again, is this also coming from you, Mr. Curley?
No, this is coming from Mike.
From Mike, I'm sorry, Mike Javasto.
Yeah, so the summary pretty much states what the Agriculture Commission's function is. It's kind of tied into the Right to Farm Declaration. One of their primary functions would be to act as mediators and negotiators in an advisory capacity on farming issues. One thing people don't tend to think about is the fact that there's actually so much agriculture and aquaculture going on in this town that we're probably practicing more agriculture in that form than has been practiced in probably the last 100 years. And part of it does tie into the next article, but in the Right to Farm Declaration, there is also a provision which would allow the Agricultural Commission to would give the opportunity for an Agricultural Commission to make recommendations to resolve grievances that are filed with the Board of Health on agricultural issues. So sort of potentially prevent disputes from going up the chain and get mediated on the sort of ground level. And then, its other functions are fairly benign, to serve as facilitators for encouraging the pursuit of land-based agriculture, promoting agriculture and agriculture-based economic opportunities in the town, acting as mediators and advocates and educators. So, and the summary pretty clearly states it out. There's also, 9 towns on the Cape and Islands that have ag commissions, and 140 towns in Massachusetts that have right to farm bylaws, 172 that have agricultural commissions. So being an agricultural town in an area with changing demographics, I think this would serve the town well.
Thank you, Mike. Questions for Mike on or anyone on this proposal? If not, Mike, you would like to speak to the right to farm bylaw briefly?
Yeah, so there's over 140 towns in Massachusetts, like I said, with right to farm bylaws and or ag commissions, including the towns of Truro, Orleans, Dennis, Harwich, Brewster, Yarmouth, Barnstable, and Falmouth. Basically, in 1987, in our health regulations, the town of Wellfleet voted that its intent was to remain a rural community, and that the keeping of farm animals allowed when and as permitted by the Board of Health at sites which meet our zoning requirements. The right to farm bylaw would codify this notion in our general bylaws. So basically put everyone on notice that this is an agricultural community. The bylaw does not change any existing bylaws, rules, regulations, or permitting requirements in the town of Wellfleet. The intent is to encourage the pursuit of agriculture, promote agricultural-based economic opportunities, and protect farmlands within the town of Wellfleet by allowing agricultural uses and related activities to function with minimal conflict with the abutters and town agencies. So it doesn't permit anything that's not already permitted. But what it does do is put everyone on notice that Wellfleet is an agriculture and aquacultural community. Basically, the reason we might need this as a town is we currently have major economic demographic shifts occurring in the town, and it's important that people understand that agriculture takes place in the town of Wellfleet at various scales and types. And in the form of agriculture, there's probably more agriculture carried out in the town of Wellfleet than in the last 100 years. And one other thing that the right to farm bylaw will provide is a process for mediating disputes between abutters should agricultural commission also be approved. And that would be an opportunity for the commission to make recommendations and to resolve grievances that are filed with the Board of Health. So it basically has no teeth. It's a declaration and a declaration of support for agriculture in the town of Wellfleet.
Thank you, Mike. Dick Elkin, got a question?
Well, I certainly support aquaculture because it's important to the town. But by lumping agriculture with aquaculture, I think we are really creating a right to have a pigsty in a residential neighborhood. And that's not theoretical, because there was some person who installed an alpaca farm, which was the equivalent of a pigsty, right next door to a property that he then sold for a house. It drove the people who bought it out of town. Now, I agree we have shifting demographics, but we should not be trying to fight those shifting demographics. We're trying to encourage people to move to town and have high-paying jobs, which may be professional, which may be technical, which may require remote access, and to have the person next door install a pigsty in their backyard is just not the right thing to do.
Okay, Dick,
So,
I said at the beginning that we weren't going to debate the merits of the article. Mike explained what the purpose of the article is, but I'd like to stay away from debating the pros and cons of.
Sure. I'd just like to correct one thing, Danny, if I may, that Dick, this bylaw has a relationship to existing bylaws, rules, and regulations right in here. Notwithstanding anything contained herein, to the contrary, nothing in this bylaw shall supersede any existing town or national seashore bylaw, zoning bylaw, rule, or regulation, and all such existing bylaws, rules, and regulations shall continue in full force and effect. And what that means is that you are not permitted by this right to farm bylaw or declaration to do anything that you're not already allowed to do in the town of Wellfleet as far as permitted agriculture. So you would not be able to put a pig farm anywhere that you're not already allowed to. That's,
Okay, Mike, I'd like to keep this moving again.
sure, I understand. I just want to correct the idea, the premise, so.
Yeah, okay, Helen first and then Ryan. Helen?
Yes, added positive fact about this. Over the years, we have different comprehensive plans and they come and go, but having this general bylaw in the books will confirm what it is that Mike in fact read. What was that from an early Board of Health minutes or something like that, that the town does choose to be rural, and that's one fact. So this will be ongoing in a way that the comprehensive plan sometimes gets out of date and is a little vaguer on this subject. The second thing is, having been on the Zoning Board of Appeals, the structure to protect farming and protect neighbors is very much in place. I can confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Ryan?
Yeah, so on the commission itself, the select board voted 3-2. There are different reasons about why it wasn't fully supported by the select board. And just to say what my concern was, is that I think there's an overlap with the Shellfish Advisory Board. And that is the only reason why I voted against the commission. So thank you.
Helen, you want to say something else?
Yeah, an extra fact, most of the agriculture in this town, as defined by the government, is aquaculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions on this article? Mike, you still got your hand up?
Oh, no, not.
Okay, Ryan, same thing. Just, it's hard enough to keep track. Thank you very much. All right, there are no other questions on the right to farm proposal. That was Article 40. Article 41 is again a home rule petition to the legislature, which would allow us to expand our residential property tax exemption. And who the proponent of this is, the select board again, or the housing trust? Housing
This
partnership?
is me again.
Okay,
So,
Ryan.
So this is a home rule petition that would allow the expansion of the residential tax exemption to properties that are rented on a year-round basis. Currently, year-round rental housing stock is currently being taxed as if it was a seasonal property. And usually when there's an increase in cost to a property owner, they pass that cost on to the tenants. And there are a number of other towns that have extension or expanded residential exemptions that cover such properties that are rented on a year-round basis. And this will be, if we pass this at town meeting, it will be filed by Representative Sear or Representative Peak and Senator Sears' offices. And as I said, this has been granted to a number of other communities, so it should make its way through the legislature fairly rapidly. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So there are other communities on the Cape where this is already in place, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, Provincetown off the top of my head, but there are a number of other towns and municipalities on the Cape or in Massachusetts as well.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Mr. Curley on this one? All right, the Article 42 is a home rule petition asking the state to, fairly complicated. It's asking the state to authorize a specific state office to grant an easement to the Blakely family. Again, I think people should be clear that this doesn't guarantee that the state is going to do that. We can't make them do that, but this would, the town passes this. I think for those who are not familiar with this, I guess Mr. Blakely's access to his property, which has just traditionally and informally been via the bike path parking lot, is now going to be restricted. So this article proposes to is a home rule petition which asks the legislature to grant the Division of Capital Assets and Management authorization to grant that easement. There is no guarantee. Just because we authorize them to do that doesn't guarantee that they're going to. However, I think people should be aware of that. Ryan, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yes, so this was again a product of a number of discussions with specifically with Senator Sears' office. And there have been other similar easements that have been granted in a similar fashion. And I taught, and both Sears and Peake's office think that there's a strong possibility that that's I would say probably a toss-up, a possibility of getting this request through legislature. So it's not just one that would be impossible for them to pass. They did say that the community really does need to demonstrate that it does have the backing of the majority of the townsfolk of Wellfleet, so that they can demonstrate that there is a strong degree of local support for this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And I guess Article 43 is a sense of the town motion which would demonstrate that level of support.
Yes.
Correct? Yes. Okay, any questions on Article 42 or 43? Okay, Article 44 would propose to create a Wellfleet Affordable Housing Trust. Harry, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Dan. The town voted at the last annual town meeting to create the Affordable Housing Trust, and currently the powers and duties of the trust are described in the enabling statute. This bylaw does a couple of things. It restates the powers in the statute so that they're part of a local bylaw so people will know exactly what they are. But it also extends the authorization of the trust to work to provide for, fund, and support income for housing for income households earning up to 120% of the area median income. This is an area for which there's no CPC support by statute, and it is an area where, given Wellfleet's housing prices, families in that income range have no realistic hope of acquiring permanent housing without help. So we wanted to expand the powers of the trust so that we could try and address, hopefully, the housing issues facing a larger fraction of our community than we would otherwise be able to. And there are a couple of other minor technical changes, specifically authorizing us to enter into grant agreements with the CPC. And we added the word support to the words fund and provide for, so that we can support projects that support affordable housing. I'm chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Questions for Harry, or any other questions about this proposal? Okay, Article 45 and 46. I think we can talk about these together. Similar articles, some minor changes in wording. Article 46 was put forth by folks who were interested in modifying our accessory dwelling unit bylaw. It was brought forth as a petition because it was, I think a lot of it had to do with timing, that the limit for when petitions could be filed was before the select board was going to have an opportunity to discuss this and perhaps put it on the warrant. So Article 46 was kind of an insurance policy to make sure that it would appear on the warrant. Article 45 was essentially the same article, which was then sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, excuse me. Is there someone who would like to speak to this before we take questions?
I'll speak to it.
Okay, Sharon Eggers.
Hi. Yes, I'm on the local housing partnership and we working with members of several other committees drafted this bylaw. And the purpose of this bylaw is to increase year-round housing opportunities in Wellfleet. And the bylaw would allow property owners, both residential and business, commercial, to create apartments on their property that are accessory to the principal already allowed use in any district in town except the seashore where a special permit from the ZBA would be required. And these apartments would be limited. They could be no smaller than 200 square feet, no larger than 1,200 square feet. And this is a movement that's happening across the country as a way to provide housing that is not based on taxes and is sort of inserted into a variety of residential neighborhoods. These apartments could be built inside of somebody's home. If they have extra space, they could be built as an addition. They could be put into an accessory building. They would have to meet all state, federal, and local regulations. They will not allow an additional bedroom beyond, they only allow as many bedrooms as are already allowed on each property. So if a person has a 3-bedroom house and a 3-bedroom lot, they can't build an ADU unless they remove a bedroom from their house, or they take one of those bedrooms in the house to create the ADU. I'm happy to take questions. I don't want to go on. I could go on.
Thank you, Sharon. I think that gives us the gist of the proposal. Are there questions for Sharon? The comments on this? Helen?
I'd like to add a few facts that are glowing about this, which is a very solidly built bylaw. I was one of the 4 people that drafted it. There's a lot of support from the select board. Mike DeVasto and Ryan have been very involved in promoting bringing this to town meeting. And one of the most amazing things about it is the major flaw, to my mind, in the AADU, the Affordable Accessory Bylaw, was that if your income went up, legally, you were supposed to leave. And so the property owner with this bylaw, you don't lose your tenant, and the tenant doesn't lose his or her or their home. And it doesn't compromise our zoning bylaws in a way that often affordable housing, gets waivers on, so it won't impact, as Sharon said, the groundwater. But another thing about it is, just as any one of us can do if we want something that isn't in our zoning bylaws, let's say if you wanted to be 2 feet into a setback, you can go for a special permit. But there is no special permit required given that you comply already with zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Kurt Felix?
Yeah, thank you. Just a question. Would this, if you have an outbuilding, say an uninsulated cottage, would this apply to that as well?
Yes.
Certainly could, yes.
Mike DeVasto?
Yeah, the intent of the bylaw is for you to be able to convert already existing structures on your property as well as new structures on your property, so long as you meet the lot restrictions and your septic restrictions, and you sign the affidavit and go through the process of creating a year-round ADU. So you're still required to be within that 15%. So 85% of your property has to remain, unless you have variances or whatever, but have to remain open space.
I think Ryan and then Helen.
Yeah, so just really quickly, one of the things that's come up is in regards to septic. It doesn't allow more bedrooms on a parcel than what is currently allowable. But it's looking like, because there would essentially be 2 housing units, that those parcels that would have an ADU might need to upgrade to an IA system of one kind or the other. So this actually could also spur some remediation of nitrogen loading within the town. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. John Wolf, and then come back to Sharon.
Yeah, just to clarify in relation to Kurt's question, he mentioned uninsulated. I would assume, since these are this is specifically for year-round use, that it would have to be upgraded with insulation and heat and so forth.
Oh, no.
Yes, I think my understanding is, and Sharon can correct me, is that in order to create a dwelling unit, you would have to meet the code requirements for a dwelling unit, which would include things like heat, hot water, plumbing, so forth. Sharon?
Yes, exactly. It would have to be a year-round unit, and it would need a year-round tenant. And that is enforced through an affidavit of compliance and very stiff penalties for being out of compliance. In addition, anytime a new dwelling unit is created on a property, this will trigger a septic evaluation. And so in some cases, maybe not all, but in many, and as Ryan referred, there may be IA, there may be a double tank, there may be other improvements to the septic system that would be required. And that's only to the benefit of all of us.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Kurt, another question?
No, just a comment on the septic. We did propose and have proposed to the Board of Health that if somebody puts an accessory dwelling unit and, or if they put an enhanced IA system in, that they would be allowed an accessory dwelling unit. So it's compatible with this bylaw and would result, as Ryan said, in net reductions in nitrogen on that property.
Very good. Thank you, Kurt. Other questions about these proposals? And just so everyone's clear, if Article 45 passes, my assumption is that the partnership will move for indefinite postponement on Article 46. Am I correct?
Yes.
I know the differences between them are slight enough. I don't think we need to pass competing bylaws. Other questions on that? All right. The Article 47 is I think it's essentially a wholesale rewrite of our animal control bylaw.
No.
Did somebody say no?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go on.
okay.
Yeah, it looks a little odd to me. So our animal control officer, Officer Desmond Keogh, pointed out that the state has changed quite a few requirements. And most of what you see is already something that's in our general bylaws. But we went through painfully and carefully changes that now have us in compliance with the state. And unfortunately, one of them is that you have to have your dogs leashed. Of course, people don't always do that, and I'm going to look the other way. But the point is, it's now not only in keeping with the state, but it's also in keeping with the National Park Service. Because if you have a dog, you can't tell. Other things were carefully discussed in terms of penalty fees and little things like the state doesn't call a vicious dog that anymore. They call it a dangerous dog. So most of it is not rewritten. Most of it is in existence, but it's been brought up to date. Thank you.
And am I correct that there were some things that were in various other places in the beach regulations and so forth, which have now been brought under the umbrella of this?
No,
or that's not correct. Okay.
No, in other words, the
Right.
beach regs and the National Park Service were looked at, right? And there was one section in our general bylaws that was moved together with this because it was about leashing dogs, and it all is now in one place. Thank goodness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Harry?
Yes, just a comment on why this is drafted as a complete replacement of Article 15, the annual animal control bylaw. And that was because when I set to trying to draft an article that added and deleted text in all the places that it was necessary to add and delete text, I ended up with such a hash, nobody could possibly understand what we were doing. So I basically said the only way to make this clear to the voters is to say, take the old text, toss it, replace it with this text, and also delete Article 3, Section 25, which was a separate dog leash bylaw, which is now incorporated in this. So I really did it for clarity of presentation to town meeting and not to suggest that it's wholly different from what we already have.
All right, thank you. And I think it would be helpful to voters to know that as we discuss this at town meeting. Thank you, Harry. Other questions on this?
I just have one more
Yes, Mike.
piece of information.
Yeah.
And that is that we did change some of the fees. One of the most, some of them are set by the state and we just came into compliance with that. But the dog feces fee goes now up to $500 for fourth and subsequent offenses. And so that's kind of a dramatic change, but I think one that basically you would have to get caught that many times not cleaning up after your dog in order to get that fine. And obviously there's some discretion on the part of the enforcement officer. But you know, hopefully it'll go a long way in cleaning up the dog feces problem that we're having in and around the marina.
Ryan?
Yeah, so I was the select board member who did not vote or voted not to support this. And it specifically has to do with the fee schedule that's proposed. I think $500 is extremely high for a lot of people. And it treats, in this instance, it treats dog feces the same as animal cruelty. So it's to me, it's a much greater difference in terms of what the actual violation is and what it calls for. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Just for my own information, is that fee structure one that is set by the state, or is that a local option?
That's a local option.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Article 47? All right. This brings us to the standard articles at the end of the town meeting. Again, this will be acted on normally as a consent calendar. This allows the town administrator to dispose of personal property if there's anything over a certain value. The town Article 49 authorizes the town collector to collect our taxes. Article 50, we assume liability for work that's done by the DEP. Otherwise, they won't do that work for us. So that's any question. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And on Article 51, we under this article, we apportion the cost of the Nauset Regional School District. Those costs are apportioned on the basis of population rather than the state's formula, which is greatly to Wellfleet's advantage. And we're fortunate that the other three towns in the region are willing to allocate those funds in an equitable manner. They don't have to, but they do every year. So Wellfleet is the beneficiary of that. I'm looking at Charlie Sumner and Brewster, who's laughing. Why is Brewster this good to us every year, Charlie? Anyway, so that
I don't want to cause trouble in my hometown.
No, just keep your mouth shut.
They're not watching this, Charlie.
any case, that brings us to the end of the forum. Just a couple of other things. I just want to make a mention that our quorum requirement has returned back to its normal requirement of 6% of registered voters. For those of you who are not aware of that, the select board last year took advantage of a provision in the state of emergency, which allowed a reduced quorum. With the expiration of that state of emergency tomorrow, that option is no longer available to the town. So we have, I think it's 3,018 voters. The quorum is 181.06, but since we can't really register a partial voter, our quorum requirement is going to be 182. That's a fair number of people, and as I know it's a difficult time with businesses opening up and a Saturday, but I do hope that we can conclude town meeting business in one day. We were very successful in getting through town meeting last year. So that anything you can do to bring folks with you, encourage people to come to town meeting, and once again, treat people with the respect that we always do. I'm hoping that we can conclude the business of town meeting, even if it's a little bit longer session on Saturday. With the other thing to be aware of is we do have town election, both for town officers and for a variety of questions. There are a number of questions, primarily the capital improvement, some of the capital improvement items that are going to require debt exclusion. The motions are going to be made to make them contingent on those debt exclusion questions. And given that people are already have the opportunity to vote if they're voting by mail, the extent to which you can provide information to your neighbors about what these proposals are so that they can make an educated vote if they're voting before they have the opportunity to hear the discussion at town meeting. I think that would be appreciated by the proponents of those articles. It's somewhat of a less than ideal situation to have voting taking place before town meeting has had a chance to weigh in, but that's the world we're living in right now. So the more information that people have on which to make those decisions, I think the better those decisions are made. So unless there are other questions, Helen?
Yeah, question. This is embarrassing. Did you just say that we have 3,018 voters or residents?
No. Give me just a second here. I will tell you what that
voters, registered voters.
Yes, the number is quite a bit higher than it's actually not that much higher than last year. But let me read you. Rebecca I'm sorry. Our town clerk just gave me the number a couple of days ago. Yes, we have 3,018 voters in town. The registration closed on June, it was either the night of June 6th or on June 7th, I think. And yes, that is the number of voters. I was surprised at that.
So what's the population?
It's not 3,100 anymore, I'll bet.
Wow. Okay, thank you. That changes a lot of things. For example, what 10% is. Thank you.
Yes, it does. Our town is growing. I think my guess is that when the census figures come out, we're going to probably be pushing a lot closer to 4,000 rather than 3,000 year-round voters. That's my guess. But the census, I don't know when the census figures come out on a local level, but yeah, those are the number of registered voters. So. In any case, again, thank you very much to the forum for sponsoring this. Thank you. We had at one point somewhere in excess of 60 people on this Zoom call. I'm very much looking forward to seeing people in 3D. I think we're all about zoomed out at this point, but I'm hoping that this is the last time we have to do this via this. Although I think it worked reasonably well. So again, thank you to the forum. And if there are no other questions, we'll bid you all good night and see you at town meeting on Saturday the 26th.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Mike.
I just have one quick thing to say.
Yes.
That the ability to hold remote meetings, I think, expires today. So as of tomorrow, 12 a.m., all meetings must be held in person. I don't think the legislature's acted yet. Is that correct, Charlie?
Well, the House and the Senate have passed some legislation that's in conflict with one another. So they are making some progress, but you're right, it hasn't passed yet.
Okay.
Ryan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, and just one thing to clarify, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion with it, is that consultants and experts or employees of the town or state agencies can still participate remotely, as they are not subject to the requirements for the open meeting law that members of public bodies are. So thank you.
Okay, I think we're a little off topic as far as town meeting.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, we have a kind of a captive audience here, so.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all, and again, see you at town meeting. Just for that, just one more piece of information. Registration for town meeting will open at 9:15. The meeting starts at 10, and I will start the meeting as soon as I have a quorum. So if you can get there and register, check in early, that will allow us to start right on time, so we can move the meeting along. All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Danny.
You're welcome.